The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And welcome to ADjunct, where we interview the best and brightest advertising professors and lecturers across the country to lend some knowledge to your ear. Today we have a special guest joining us, Bill Schwab, professor of practice at Indiana University and a creative director with over 25 years of experience at major ad agencies. Schwab has worked on globally recognized brands such as GE, BMW, McDonald's, and United Airlines. And he's received recognition for his work in Adweek, AdAge, The One Show, and more. He's also an award-winning fine artist, which we'll talk about. As a professor of practice at IU, Schwab is actually looking for talented lecturers to join their advertising program. So if you're an experienced professional in the industry and interested in sharing your knowledge with the next generation, be sure to reach out to Schwab. But first, let's get to know him better as we talk about his career journey and valuable lessons he's learned, including the idea that everyone looking for a job in advertising is just like a cereal box, whether you know it or not. Also, if you're interested in advertising, whether that's strategy, copywriting, art direction, or heck, even an account, it is worth checking out Breaking and Entering's brand new Crowbar Awards. We're releasing a new creative brief every quarter for you to work on with a friend. Whether or not you enter is up to you, but we do have Greg Hahn judging this first show. He's the co-founder of Mischief, one of the top advertising agencies in the business today. It's an award and a tool. The best campaign will earn an actual blue crowbar, but we do not advise you to break into an advertising agency with it. But hey, if you do, take some pictures because that's pretty funny. We got recruiters and professionals all across the industry that will be watching, that will want to hire the winners. So reach out to me if you have any questions. It is live now. Visit www.crowbarawards.com for details. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast Adjunct Edition. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right. Bill Schwab, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast Adjunct Edition. How are you doing today?
Good, Gino. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on. I'm excited to talk with you all things advertising because you are a professor of advertising at Indiana University. Is that correct? Thanks. Well, I'm glad to have you on. I think we're going to go, we can talk a little bit about you, about your experience in the industry, and then how you got into academia and what you teach. Sound good?
Okay. I should be able to answer those questions.
Great.
And talk about them intelligently.
That's the goal. Amazing. So where do you want to start? I guess let's start high level. Tell us about your current role today as a professor of advertising. Is this professor of practice? What is the actual term here?
Yeah, I'm a professor of practice, which means that I'm expected to bring the benefits of my industry experience into the classroom. And that can manifest itself in different ways. Sometimes it's your relationship with the industry and your connections within the industry can bring some richness to the academic experience for students. It gives you a little more freedom than, say, if you get into the technical terms, a lecturer, for instance, at a university teaches 3 classes. I teach 2 classes. That doesn't mean it doesn't translate into free time of doing nothing. It translates into bringing some of perhaps your industry experience into, like I say, into the classroom, but also you also bring some of the industry experience to the construction of the courses in the program. You might say, hey, I was talking to someone I know in the industry who's developing this way of measuring audience response or something like that, that's something you can bring into the classroom that may even influence how the courses are structured.
Gotcha. And now, do you oversee the advertising concentration?
I advise and I work with the director of undergraduate studies to develop courses.
Okay.
So that's really mostly what my role is in terms of broader scope of what's going on in the program.
Gotcha. So what's the larger vision right now for the program at IU? And I definitely want to get into it high level, and not as much because I think some of our listeners they might not care as much if they're not at Indiana. But I want to know what's the larger vision of the program? What are you hoping to accomplish there?
Well, it depends on. I can answer that different ways. Being in advertising, having an advertising background, I always wonder about the consumer of the message. So I'm thinking that if the consumer message that we're talking to right now is listening and saying, okay, I might be interested in going, why would I be interested in coming to Indiana University to get an advertising education? The media school is a place where students come to learn to tell stories. Tell stories effectively using all kinds of electronic media, or when you're writing a news piece, when we're working in public relations, when we're working in game design, or when we're working in advertising. All of us are storytellers. And I thought that was a very attractive thing about the media schools, that we were using these different disciplines to tell stories for different purposes.
Right. In the media school, there's different paths. There's journalism, there's advertising, and then there might be some other ones. But for our focus on this podcast, I care about advertising. And I understand that this media school, you're saying like the different areas, they all are united by the common goal is to share stories. And you could probably tap into these other disciplines as well because you're in the same school. You could probably, you might have the resources of the production studio that journalists might use, but that makes sense to me.
Sure. You can relate to this yourself. If you do a podcast, you are a journalist. And you're presenting this point of view through your podcast, or providing information through this podcast. But also you could use those skills you learn in your podcast to persuade consumers to consider purchasing a product. So
right.
I think that what we've seen in a trend in so many communications is that these skills move across different disciplines. I've got a terrific student, a couple of terrific students in the past who've been in my advertising classes, who were, say, for instance, in the IDS, the Indiana Daily Student, which is a terrific news source for the entire student body. And in Indiana, in past years, it was a newspaper. But now it's, of course, moved into all these other channels to disseminate news, while it still uses traditional journalism techniques of writing stories, verifying information, all the craft that you will apply to the field of journalism. Now, the student could take a journalism class and learn to write stories from a journalism standpoint, but they can also apply those skills to what maybe they switch over into advertising and start to develop skills as a copywriter. Or they find that, hey, what I really want to do is I want to look for the exact, the most powerful image I can find, or create that image to tell a news story. But those disciplines also work in advertising as well.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. And how long have you been there again?
I've been there 4 years.
Nice. Gotcha. So I want to get now into, I want to understand like what you were doing before you were teaching here. So professor of practice, we've known from this show, we've done a couple of these episodes now. professor of practice, you must have industry experience. You said in the beginning that you're bringing your industry experience to the classroom, to the curriculum as well as you're developing it and growing it, which we can get back to later. But what'd you do? What was that moment? What were some of those high level or high points in your career? Were you a writer? Were you a copywriter? Were you an art director? Tell us about it.
In the other career before I became a teacher, which is a related but different career.
Mm-hmm.
So so I was very lucky in my advertising career because I worked at some project agencies and worked with some really great creative directors and directors and copywriters and all these super talented people who really taught me advertising. So I worked in I had stints at Charlotte Day. I worked at MRD and Purist. I worked at Callan, and I worked at BBDO as really large agencies. I've also worked at a number of smaller agencies over the years. It's freelance. So I had kind of the usual advertising career, I guess, that people have when they get to a certain age, let's say. So the I really started out thinking I wanted to be an art director, mostly because I went to art school and I studied painting, and I still paint. And so I regard myself as someone who has some visual sensibility. Along the way, I discovered in advertising that you not only had to have the ability to put things down on a piece of paper that looked like something, you had to understand the rationale behind it. You had to understand why this image might be particularly appropriate for the product or brand that you were being asked to persuade people to consider. So I sort of figured out that, hey, this is a thing called strategic thinking. And if you understand strategic thinking, you understand that there's a brand and that brand has a story, and you understand that somewhere out there is a consumer that has needs. And what you're doing in advertising is you're creating this bridge between the two. And that once I got to that point in my career, which I thought was super cool, or like a eureka moment. Hey, this is how it works. This is why people are telling me what I'm doing is good or bad or makes sense or doesn't make sense, or why clients might respond to this particular solution that I came up with. So I kind of reversed my way. I sort of proceeded in my career in reverse of what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to understand all this stuff, and then you're supposed to go out and create it. I kind of started creating, and then I understood it. And along the way, I got rapidly promoted. I must have been good at something, really pretty rapidly promoted into being a creative director.
Amazing. And this makes sense because you started off in fine arts, right? You studied fine arts in school.
Yeah.
You didn't study the advertising, like the concepts behind it and building campaigns. So you figured it out along the way. So who gave you that first shot then? Like what was that first role in advertising?
I got in the door at an agency because I could draw, and agencies were always looking for people that, and the way the agencies would look at it a lot of times is, hey, if we could have somebody draw storyboards and layouts, we don't have to pay somebody outside of the agency to do it. So that was how I got into it.
That's not untrue today as well. If you have good craft and you're a content creator, let's say, and you can really execute, and maybe you want to be a designer, with agencies could, if they're really in need and they win some new business, it's not impossible for them to be like, hey, you're just really talented. We'll figure it out. Like, we'll pick you up if that's not unheard of still today. Yep.
I think what I tell my students is, hey, the more skills you have, better you are at those skills. If they're related any way to storytelling, you have a much better shot of getting a job in an agency. And let's face it, an agency is a place where people have, inside of an agency is this kind of, you know, this car that's going to ship or whatever, depending on the size of the agency. It can be anything from a go-kart to a battleship rolling down the road. And people in agencies constantly have to be meeting needs of clients. And if you have a skill that meets a need at a particular time in agency, then you are likely to hook on.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's really important, like in your undergrad when you have time, is to start developing those skills, whether that's writing headlines or long copy, whatever it is, so your copywriting focus, or getting familiar with the Adobes, specializing in editing, whether that's video, audio, or any sort of production skills, or your art direction layout with Illustrator, InDesign, mainly just Illustrator and Photoshop are probably the big two. But yeah, learning those skills are so crucial. That craft element, you'll understand the concepting as you get into your portfolio classes at Indiana, right?
Well, I talk to my students, and I ask them when I'm teaching them portfolios, one of the first things I do is that, I tell them to walk through a supermarket and stand in an aisle and look at cereal. And you stand in the cereal aisle, and first of all, it's about 100 feet long. It's stacked from floor to as high as you can look. There's cereal boxes. And every one of those boxes has cereal. And many of the cereals are pretty similar. So what makes you want to buy one cereal over the other? As your hand reaches towards that cereal box, why is it going to pick out one thing or the other? And there's different kinds of reasons. Some of them have to do with product difference. Some of them have to do with price. Some of them have to do with feelings of nostalgia. You might be feeling down that day and you want that breakfast cereal that reminds you when you were a kid and everybody loved you. Right. It's great. Instead of the day you're having today. But I tell them that they are essentially like those cereal boxes. They are just a whole bunch of cereal boxes standing there in front of the creative recruiter and the agencies who are interested in hiring you. And so you have to figure out as your own personal cereal box, what are you going to stand for? So what goes into your portfolio really marks what sort of cereal you are, or soap, or shampoo.
Right. No, this is interesting.
Like a product.
Very, very interesting. Your personal brand. So you're saying you have to brand yourself well. Your portfolio is a representation of your brand that you're debuting to these agencies or client side nowadays with in-house shops. It's totally legal. You're conveying a message of who you are to these recruiters, right? As that recruiter's walking down the aisle, it does make sense looking at a bunch of different scenarios.
Right. And they're in a hell of a hurry and under a lot of pressure. And they have to make a decision. And they're very skilled at making those decisions. And so another thing that I talk to them about is every little nuance in the portfolio is going to help that creative recruiter make a decision about you as a brand. So what I tell them is that this is by far the most complicated and most important ad you're going to do in your undergraduate career is your portfolio. It's an ad for you. So that has to be the best possible representation of who you are.
Yep. So the ad absolutely makes sense. And you get them to that portfolio class. Are they usually like upperclassmen, underclassmen? Like anybody can enroll in it? How does it work?
Well, in an ideal world, I'd like to think that anybody could enroll in a portfolio as soon as they start thinking about advertising, that they could get in the portfolio class that at least says, okay, here's the basics of putting a portfolio together. Now, as they go through the program, the content that's in that portfolio gets better and better.
Yep.
If you can grasp what is the portfolio, who am I when I'm writing captions in my portfolio? Who are those captions directed to? Well, they're directed to the creative recruiter. Well, what are their priorities? What's important to them when they're looking at a portfolio? When you think about it, that's what we train people to do when we're talking about advertising. You have to understand your consumer. You have to understand their needs, their wants. What motivates them to make the choice they're going to make. So understanding what the presentation of a portfolio is can be grasped early on. The content, of course, then has to keep improving. Then that's going to measure. It's going to be a measure of how good the person is, how good the program is, how dedicated they are to making themselves better.
Gotcha. Do you guys have like a creative track for advertising majors, or do they just specialize and take different elective classes?
We have tracks. They're not as, we do have tracks in our program.
Okay. You do have tracks. So you have a creative track. Is there like a media? Is there account like strategy?
It's a typical undergraduate program, and that we do offer courses for students that are more interested in perhaps an account executive or doing research or doing media buying or specializing in creative.
Gotcha. So you definitely could specialize in the major you're saying, and that's great. And you kind of oversee those creative classes, right?
Well, I'm involved. I'm involved in a lot of the classes that are oriented towards creative. Although I have taught the campaigns course, I've taught the introduction course to advertising. I've taught quite a few courses in the time that I've been at media school, which has given me a great perspective on different aspects of advertising.
Gotcha. And you've got some great alumni out in Chicagoland area, got some great agencies, and I'm sure other places as well, other cities. So I am curious, what sets those students apart that do land in those agency positions, whether they're junior copywriting, junior art director, junior account roles? What sets them apart? What can you tell early on? Like there's these skills, there's a mindset that these students might have when you're teaching them. Is there a differentiation point?
I would say definitely there are students that you have the feeling when you're teaching them that they are going to succeed. And it has turned out to be true. I mean, you have students that graduate that have gone to IU and then gone on and they're working at Burnett, they're working at High Dives, distillery projects. We have people at Ogilvy. We have people that have done really well in the industry, and I'm enormously proud of all of them. I hear from a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And they come back and talk to our students, which is great. And they come back with a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Wonderful to see. But I think what marks a student that is successful is the student that, what I tell my students in the class is like 90% of what's going to make you successful is on. A very good teacher can sort of lay out what you should know.
Yes.
Like it's one thing for us to say, you should know this. You should understand creative strategies. You should understand the difference between a campaign that is about product difference and a campaign that's about brand image. You should appreciate those differences. But the really great students go on to study that themselves. They take it upon themselves to learn and relearn and relearn. It's like learning a musical instrument. A teacher can talk to you about, you're singing in the back of your throat, or, you've got bad technique when you need to work on your embouchure. Those teacher can tell you that. They can give you the drills.
Yeah.
Unless you do that, and do them over and over again, you're not going to get good at it. And that's what the good students do. The other thing good students do is they show up office hours all the time.
That's good. I think that's so interesting. This is not like a degree where you can, or engineering, where you study the material and you pass a test and you get a CPA in accounting, or I don't know, like med school. I just think there's this degree is so there. It's not focused on remembering answers and learning one and passing one test and then you're in. There's so much application, so much practice that you need to do on your own that you can learn in the classroom. A lot of the times the classroom help you get in those group scenarios, group projects that are super helpful, but it's really just working at this degree, correct?
Without a doubt. It's every day, it's working at it. And it's a strange business in that when you see it portrayed in media, like in movies or TV shows or things like that, it seems like it's a lot of magic. Suddenly somebody has an idea and it's great and it's sold and it happens. It's in reality, it's way more like grinding away at something, and being passionate about it as you do it. You have to be passionate about, and you have to be the kind of person that says, toilet paper. Wow. I didn't know there was all this stuff to learn about toilet paper. Why not? We'll go to the factory and we'll learn about toilet paper. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about toilet paper for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then we make these presentations about toilet paper. We eat, sleep, and think about toilet paper for weeks at a time.
Yep.
You have to be wired in a certain way to have passion. And, I've worked on all kinds of products, from not toilet paper, but paper towels, I think, there was somewhere, to BMWs. And, it's a lot easier. You could say, well, it's a lot easier to get excited about a BMW than it is about paper towels. But actually, it's kind of the same in a way. It's you want to be peeking into that. And the students that have that sort of bent and that sort of passion to understand something and want to be more successful.
Yep. That definitely makes sense. I do want to note, though, if you are a student, and I think you can focus on things that do excite you while you have the chance, right? While you're building your portfolio outside of your class. I think if you are focusing on things you love or you think can be improved, that is a great creative challenge. Now's the time to do it, because when you do get hired at an agency, you won't have the choice anymore. You're going to be working on what you get assigned to. You still need to be curious, and you will be, but now you have that freedom, and you can learn what you need to learn. You can pick the brands that you want in your portfolio. You can work with your professors if you have an idea. I think, take that freedom while you have it now and make it great, because that portfolio will have to last you another 1 or 2 years.
Well, I think that's true. Just to be contrarian a bit, though, I think it's also good if students can go at something that they probably don't have passion about, and bring passion to it.
Yeah.
Because, actually it's the process you have passion for. It's not the product.
Yes. Yeah. That's why there's multiple campaigns there. It's good to mix it in.
Do a great ad about nails. Why should you choose one brand of nail over another? If you do a great campaign about nails, and I'm a creative director and I see that, I'm going to go, God, this is a person that wants to do advertising.
Yeah, did the research, did the homework, but made me believe to buy this different nail brand.
Yeah, because that's, whether you're selling nails, like I said, whether you're selling nails or you're selling something truly sexy as a product, it's the same process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, diving deep, figuring out what makes it different, one benefit, and really honing in on it.
I had kids who, I had a student a couple semesters ago who did a great ad for lawnmowers.
Nice.
You
What
know,
was the brand?
there were Honda lawnmowers.
Oh, nice.
So, what is the great ad for a lawnmower? How do you approach that? In the same process, you use the same process for selling lawnmowers as you do for selling diamonds or for selling
What'd they say about the lawnmower?
hamburgers. One thing to do about, I'm going to butcher the headline.
Yeah.
Was something along, what they did was they took the idea that, I'm going to butcher the headline. The thought was that the mower works even when it's not running.
Oh, cool.
In other words, because the mower mulches as well as cuts, that it's mulching your grass and it's making your lawn look better even when it's not cutting it.
Very cool.
But see, that's like a person who took the product information, dug into what this product does.
Right.
Is going to be valuable to a consumer.
Right. Whether it's a lawnmower, nails, or BMW, you still have to have the passion for that process, you're saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Is there any other pieces that you kind of find yourself always reminding your students that you want to get out to the world? Any other advice?
And it probably have to be sitting in the classroom looking at the concepts to be able to throw that stuff out. I kind of, I love the days when we do critiques, and we do them a lot. And one of the students invariably will have a really great idea. And first of all, what I tell them is there's this rational process that you can use to get to an ad. There is, it's not just magic. There's a process involved. So do that. Then after you do the process, then a student will invariably put the words together in a way that you would never have thought of doing, or put down an image, an idea for an image that you would have never thought about doing yourself. And that's so exciting. And so what I try to do is make sure that everybody in the classroom realizes that that's happened, that somebody has broken through they get all the process stuff right, which they have to learn to do. So that's not easy. They learn to do that. And then somebody something happens because they've worked at it a lot.
I love it.
I want them to absorb that and appreciate that. And that's, and we'll try to go.
Yeah. A bunch of times over again.
Right.
I love it. Well, it sounds like you're creating an environment where they can do that. And that's what we want, right?
Yeah. We hope so.
Amazing.
And by the way, I can throw in a commercial.
Yeah, feel free.
We are looking for professors to help people that are interested in transitioning into the advertising field as a teacher. I'm sorry, let me put it this way. You're looking for people who are interested in teaching as a career and using their advertising knowledge and teaching students about advertising.
To also create that environment. Yep.
So they should contact.
Yeah. I hope that you find the right audience here. I don't know if they'll be listening, but that's more than, it's more than okay. Hopefully they tune in. And yeah, was there anything else? Because I think the only other question I had was, how can people reach out to you if they want to, join what you're doing, or students want to get some feedback? What's the best way to reach out to you?
They can reach me at my email, which is weschwab@iu.edu.
Perfect.
And I'll be happy to talk to anyone.
Amazing.
Advertising, about teaching, which is this wonderful other job that I found myself doing that I really enjoy.
Perfect. All right, Bill. Well, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know you're getting ready for classes, so best of luck with that as they start back up. Yeah, that's all I got. So people can reach out to you whenever they feel like it.
Okay, sure can. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. If you like what you heard, it would mean a lot to us and help us grow and get better guests and better break-ins if you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us 5 stars and a small review if you have the time. Be sure to connect with our guests if you like what they said by going to our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. That's all one word, Breaking and Entering Pod on Instagram. We have links to their portfolios and their LinkedIn, and they want to connect, so do that. And thank yous. Thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio engineer, and Buchan Zhang, our creative director. Can't do it without you two, and a team from the University of Illinois. It's a student team from the agency called AdBuzz. They're a PR agency, and it's been a pleasure working with them. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next week with another amazing guest.